You know, if you're watching this channel, you probably already know this, but Valve has a new VR headset coming, and I gotta say, I'm both excited and a little bit worried. So let's talk about it. Hello and welcome. My name is Wolfy. You're watching Less Than Cake, the channel where I talk about video games while inside of a video game. And this is VR chat, which I'm sure you probably could have guessed. VR chat's actually kind of an interesting point to all of this, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. So Valve has a new headset coming, the Steam Frame. And the Steam Frame is cool for a couple of reasons. One, got eye tracking, just like this headset does. It has an expansion bay in the front that could potentially be used for a future face tracking module, like this one. The screens are just as good as the Quest 3. So they're not as high resolution as these or the big screen, but they are fairly high resolution. Pancake lenses, so it's smaller than the Vive Focus Vision, but a little bit bigger than the big screen. And it's got inside-out tracking, along with new controllers, new grips. There is finger tracking on those, which is an upgrade over this, to be honest. So cool stuff all around. It has an onboard processors because it's going to be capable of standalone gaming. And it has wireless streaming to your PC. And it's going to use foveatic streaming in order to make it so that it works. All this stuff sounds really, really cool. And it's going to be running SteamOS, which on my main channel, I kind of talked about how it's the fact that we've got Linux working with VR is in and of itself a miracle. So I'm curious. I'm going to try it, obviously. I have to try it when it finally comes out to see how good it actually is. But it sounds like we've got a better Quest 3 with some features that I would want, and I'm hopeful for. There are a couple of sticking points that I am a little bit worried. I'm actually going to zoom this camera out a little bit so you can kind of see them. So one problem with this headset, and I do presume that it would be the same problem that will happen with that headset. So if I put my hands here, normal hand position, and I just kind of like give it a second. Oh, I actually kept track of them. Eventually, the headset's going to lose them, and they're just going to prove me wrong. You just want to prove me wrong? Oh, I lost them for a second. Here. I'll obscure them. There. Now they're lost. So you saw that pop in. I'm genuinely worried about that on the new headset. And that's because this headset is pretty damn close to perfect. It covers all of my needs, minus some, cool creature comforts like having pancake lenses, like what would be in the future rendition of this. And that one aspect alone is why I have a big screen beyond coming. Yeah, that is it. That is the one thing that is causing me to get the beyond. And so I am concerned about that. They did say that, well, Linus said that there's IMU data, which hopefully means that there's better IMU data than what's on these controllers. That will allow for accurate tracking when there's occlusion, which I hope that there is. But overall, it looks like it's going to be a really cool package. And I do hope that it sits around the $650 range, because then it will undercut this headset and it will undercut the big screen and be the preferable option as opposed to the Quest for anybody who wants to get into VR. Where I see some problems, and you guys know I made a video about this already, but I am a little bit worried about the future of stuff like big screen. So I have a big screen beyond E2A. I have the one with eye tracking coming, and I didn't get the VR chat edition because I didn't have the option to at the time. So I'm not gonna have the cool purple one, but I do have a nice clear one, and it should be arriving sometime late December or early December, late November, because I ordered it in October. But it's on its way. I procured replacement base stations already, and those replacement base stations are why I was able to pick up the big screen and not worry. I already have Knuckles because I have Valve Index. Valve already has said they're no longer going to be making the Index, the Knuckles, or the base stations. And that worries me, because if they're not making the Knuckles, the best like Steam VR base station controllers are no longer being made. They're no longer making base stations. Who is? And are there any workarounds for this? Where are you going to get controllers now that you can't get Knuckles? Like, big screen is in a weird position where you can't get the rest of the kit. You can get the headset. That's it. And I do hope that they have a plan. Valve did say that they're looking to maybe have someone manufacture the Knuckles, which, please, if that is the case, that will solve 90% of the problem. Because at least the base stations have been taken care of. So after my last video, I did some research, bought some things, tried to figure out, what is the next step for us? I have Diver X contact gloves, which are close enough in proximity to function to something like the Knuckles controllers that they might be a viable option, albeit an expensive option since they're $500 plus import fees. And then the one downside I had is that the triggers weren't very accessible. And so I found out that they actually are now selling a trigger extension, which will make those a little bit better. And they're $7, but I'd have to pay like $24 to get it into the country. So that's the downside to that. But that might be an option in the future. For base stations, HTC has taken up full manufacturing for them. So we will still have those. The price is still more than Valve was charging. Valve was around $150-ish, $160. HTC is charging like $220. So that has gone up in price, but they're still available and they're still making them. And they're still making them because of the Vive trackers and the professional applications that go with that. So I'm not as worried about base stations as I am about controllers. And we're in the exact spot that I predicted that we would be, where we have the best PC VR headset on the market, being the Big Screen Beyond, and we've got nothing to go with it. And that sucks. That's where we're stuck at. Now, do I think that the Steam Frame is going to replace, all of the base station based stuff? Depends. I think that it's going to be the better option for getting into this. In fact, I do think with my Vive Tracker Ultimates, the Steam Frame, and probably the Babel Face Tracker, which I also have coming, I'm going to be able to have a really good experience that may emulate or even surpass this. This is still going to be the highest clarity I think I'm going to experience on a headset, aside from maybe the Big Screen Beyond, which is coming up. And that Beyond 2E is probably going to set a bar that Valve isn't going to be able to hit. Where Valve is going to be able to surpass it, though, is in some of its functionality. So something that sucks about using a headset like this as a display is you got your Guardian around you. And even if you have a dynamic Guardian, this sucks to do. Try putting a chair in your setup so that you can play a game, and using your controllers so that you can play a game, like a normal flat screen game. Isn't that great? What the Steam Frame does seem to do is it actually addresses both these problems. One, instead of the controllers being like this, where there are two buttons and thumbsticks, there's going to be thumbsticks, a D-pad on one side, and then a standard button array on the other, along with dual shoulder buttons on each controller, which is kind of nice, actually. They'll have standard controls that you could use to, play your games while seated. Additionally, the streaming feature is done wirelessly. So, hypothetically, you could move anywhere, like a couch, move into seated mode, and be good. That might even be great for certain VR chat users who the only thing they do is look at the mirror. They can sit while doing that now. And I do think that this might actually be really cool for new users. One of the downsides to this headset is that standalone, it doesn't have anything really going for it except for maybe VR chat. And that's entirely thanks to how Oculus owns most of the VR market. But the one place they do consistently sell certain things is Steam. And since this headset is going to be running Steam OS, it would make something like, say, Beat Saber accessible. And that's the one game that I would play standalone on here if it were available. Unfortunately, because Vive has to use its own stuff, it's not. Now, Valve did say that there's the possibility that SteamOS could come to other headsets. Like, imagine this thing starts using SteamOS. Could be cool. Could be useful. But I almost don't think that this is the headset that's going to do it. I think that whatever the sequel to this headset is the one that they're going to be in talks with Valve about getting that stuff set up. Another cool thing is apparently the controller is going to have an IR blaster. The Steam controller, it's going to have an IR blaster, so that's easier to find in VR. Little details that is actually really nice, you know? It's just a shame that in the process of doing this, they're getting rid of the base station side of things, which is where there was an upgrade path in the first place. So you're probably going to be buying into this, much like how you buy into this, and eventually you will hit a wall that can't be passed. And once you hit that wall, there's not much you can do. So, for example, the reason I don't use my contact gloves, despite having them, is they require trackers to be mounted to the gloves themselves. And in VR chat, I haven't calibrated it yet so that the gloves don't just, when I move everything, like see this, I'm trying to avoid this. And I have these on my gloves because I was trying to like test the calibration. And so I'd have to figure that out, of course, and like get that working so that it doesn't do that. One solution would be to add more trackers if I were using, regular base station trackers instead of the 5-tracker ultimates. You can't add more trackers than I already have. I have a full set of 5. You can't add another dongle to add 5 more. It doesn't work that way. So that's the wall that I hit here, right? And I'm still connected to PCVR because if I wasn't, then I couldn't do half the stuff I already am doing, which is technically a wall for some people, right? And I think that the Steam Frame is going to have the same problem. Let's say I were trying to do my content. Does the foveatic rendering / streaming that's necessary, will it make the output that is on the screen that I have to capture, will it foveate that so that there's no way to capture it? That's one of the problems with PlayStation VR, actually. Did they think about that? Like, is the output separate from the sent data? These are all things that we're going to have to test, right? So while I am excited, I don't think that this thing's going to top my VR list. I do think that the big screen coming up will. And when the big screen gets here, it's probably going to replace this headset in my main usage. That is after the Babel arrives, because I have a Babel face tracker also arriving. So, yeah. But eventually, this one will go into retirement. Technically, it would be the only standalone in my arsenal, except for like a Quest 2. But once the Steam Frame comes out, I think that's going to be the better standalone headset. So it's like I'm excited on one side and a little bit worried on the other. But what do you guys think? I really want to know in the comments. Do you want this? Is this cool and that you're like, oh, this might actually be really awesome? Or are you in the boat that I am, where you're a little bit, not melancholy, but a bit half and half on it, right? It's good, but it could be bad. Specifically for the ecosystem that we've built around base station tracking, because it is just a little bit better. So I want to know what you guys think. I'll see you in the next one. Wolfy, out.